Hey guys, next Tuesday, April 7th, 2020, we will be running an SEO webinar. Now, I know what you're thinking, and this webinar will not be full of fluff and BS, but instead jam-packed with information as all these podcasts are. No secrets held back. Plus, at the end, we'll have a chance to chat. And everyone, as we're on quarantine, needs that so bad right now, including myself, who usually doesn't socialize much. To sign up for the SEO webinar, please join my Facebook group in the bio or follow any of my socials to get the notification when signups are going live this Friday at 3 p.m. Central Time. The webinar will also fully introduce our mentor project one-on-one mastermind. And guys, like I've said before, there's truly absolutely nothing out there like this. Think one-on-one mentoring affordably plus a virtual academy in full. Mind blown, right? This is going to be super unique and extremely beneficial to everyone. Hopefully, it's also a turning point for the entire teaching industry. See you guys April 7th.
Thank you for listening to the Mentor Project, where we discuss marketing, SEO, how to go full-time in your business, and so much more. Here's your host, Nicole Bruce.
Morgan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. I'm glad I could be here.
All right, so to get started here, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Morgan Nagle, and I'm the owner of Heck Designs and Photography. I have a bachelor's in fine arts in graphic design from Omar College of Design. Now I mainly focus on wedding photography, but I do have a background in graphic design, which helps me a lot in dealing with branding and how to present yourself to clients.
Yeah, definitely. And so we were just talking last week, and it was just a casual conversation because, we talk outside of work and we go over different ideas and different frustrations that we see and stuff like that. And the idea of branding came up and how branding is so important to show off your business and to get those ideal clients before they even look at your prices. So, can you explain to us just a little introduction as to what actually branding refers to?
Yeah, so branding is more than just like your logo. It's the feel you give throughout your business, whether it's how you talk to your clients, your colors. Again, your logo is involved in it, but it's more about how you present yourself and the feeling that your company or business provides and evokes to the people who see it.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of people make the mistake of when they think branding, they're like, oh, I have a logo done. I'm good. And it's so much more than that.
Right, right. It goes well beyond the logo. And that's one thing I was talking to a friend with. We were looking at his website, and I'm like, well, who's your ideal client, and what do you want your website to say about you? Because it's more than just slapping your logo on there and going from there. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, definitely. So, when you're talking about branding, what all should be involved with branding other than your logo, obviously?
Yeah, so you definitely need to think about like who your ideal client is and what they're looking for. So the different things that are involved in branding would be um, your website, colors, fonts, anything like that that's going to carry throughout all of your marketing. And whether it's your website, business cards, ads you run on Facebook, different things like that. And also how you speak to your client is another big part of branding that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah, definitely. And I know in past episodes, we've kind of talked about how talking to your clients is a way of marketing. And I would kind of say that branding is a way of marketing. Do you kind of agree with that?
Oh, for sure. Because if you have your branding in place, then it makes like even just creating your marketing materials a lot easier because you don't have to go through and pick what font is going to look good or what colors. You have all that right in place. So you just, grab your different files and put it in, and it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. And like you were saying before, branding should actually like reach out and grab your ideal clients. So it's
Right.
meant to kind of like filter through people for you, which obviously is a way of marketing and tweaking it to where you can actually hit, those high-end clients that you want to hit without actually talking to them. So to kind of clarify that, can you give an example as to kind of how branding helps us reach our target client?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a light and airy photographer who mainly shoots in the city, you're not going to have a logo with like a tree in it or like a more of like a hand done logo. You're going to want something that's more like maybe crisp or like a beautiful script or something like that, because you're not reaching those clients who are doing like elopements and things like that, or like elopements on mountaintops and different things like that, who are going to be up for hiking, or just the opposite. If you are hitting those wanting to hit those ideal clients where you go out and hike with them to reach the mountaintop location or whatever it may be, you're not going to have this crisp, clean logo or like, bright colors. You're probably going to have more muted earth tones, which reflect the space and that you shoot in mostly.
Yeah, we were talking about actually a couple months ago how if you look at my logo for like Wanderlust, and it's
Mhm.
it's definitely hand drawn, and it speaks to my clients because it's all about adventure and different types of scenery and stuff like that. And you look at your logo and yours is very, it's very classic, it's very clean. And just looking at our work and kind of, you want to serve those classics and those beautiful moments, and I want everything that's explorative and adventurous and weird, and so our logos
Right.
kind of show that in our different colors. If you look at our websites, they're completely different.
Completely different. Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point. And that's one thing that I'm working with a friend later on is I'm like, okay, well, who are you trying to reach? What target market are you going for? Because we talk about creating an ideal client when you're trying to market for a photographer, but nobody seems to take it. A lot of people don't seem to take it beyond that, as far as like how you implement that in your marketing in different ways. Everybody just talks about, well, where does your ideal client shop and what do they look for and things like that. But you have to take that beyond just where you look for your client and bring that into your website and your logo and your colors, because that's really reflective of your photography and your business as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're thinking like luxury photography, you're thinking soft pinks or sages or, light blue, like something really soft and elegant. Whereas if you go on a website and there's like bright yellow and bright blue and bright orange, that's not really a photography color. Like it's a very retail-y color. Like it
Yeah.
kind of gives the impression that it's going to be either like cheap or branded to like a sports team, has bright colors, food restaurants, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like one thing you have to think about when putting together your branding is what colors are your ideal client going to be attracted to? For me, my website is like a dark navy blue with like pops of yellow and different things like that, because I have more of a like, it's on the lighter end of moody, and that's what my client looks for.
Hmm.
So where yours is more with Wanderlust, it's more of a like muted and earth
Hmm.
tones, which is reflective of adventurous lifestyle and elopements.
Yeah, definitely. And you kind of have to think, if people are really trendy, right? Their houses right now are probably in like the farmhouse style or like, neutral colors, whites, grays. Like you said, navy blue is pretty neutral. You're not going to do some like crazy color because that's just not going to hit the audience.
Right, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely reflective of your brand as well.
Yeah. So, okay. So we know that branding kind of filters out your audience for you, which is really cool. So let's go into what branding actually delivers as a message to your client.
Yeah, so branding definitely helps with like connecting to your audience and finding your ideal client. And it, like I said before, it helps you create your marketing material to have like having a clear and distinct brand will make you memorable. Business that's there's so many people, you have to be able to stand out. And having clear marketing that shows your values and the purpose of your brand is huge. That way, it will help you stand out.
Yeah. And like you said, there's so many different photographers. And when people are looking for a wedding photographer, they're not just going to click on your website and be done. They're going through 75 different websites. So, how can you get them to remember your website? Like, what can make you unique, which isn't only like we've talked about before, copy and stuff like that, which obviously that's part of branding as well, but your colors and your fonts and just your whole collective image of your business. You want to kind of ingrain in their memory so that they come back to you and want to hear more.
Right, you want it to be cohesive all throughout. And that's one thing, like, everybody talks about, like, a cohesive Instagram feed and, like, things like that. Well, having a cohesive brand is just as important. You wanna make sure that, you know, your colors and your fonts and everything translate from one page to another and, translate throughout your marketing, so that way people remember you throughout. Like you said, they're going to be looking at tons and tons of websites and Instagrams and things like that. So you want to make sure that you're memorable and are showing truly who you are and who your brand is throughout.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point. Most people are so concerned about getting their Instagram feed consistent. And I feel like people aren't that concerned about their website being consistent.
Yes.
Would the Instagram feed and your website kind of be the same look?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, your branding should reflect what your photos look like what we talked about earlier. So if your Instagram is cohesive and your branding's cohesive with your photos and your target, then it all should line up anyway. So I think making sure that that's all cohesive and looks similar is really important. But if you're doing it correctly, it should automatically do that and fall into place.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I know we've talked about how branding kind of helps you and going into the marketing and going into actually nailing down your ideal client. So let's go into how it actually helps your business as a whole. Not only does it help find the ideal clients, like you said before, but obviously it can help you in other ways as well.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things it does is it builds credibility. So if you're constantly changing your logo or changing your branding and things like that, people start to question legitimacy and your credibility. Just like you how you want to be like the best in your field and your type of photography, like how you should find your niche and go from there. Well, if you're changing what your look is and your branding is, then it's going to create confusion as well. So having something that's consistent will definitely build credibility. Another thing we kind of touched on earlier was creating marketing material. A lot of people struggle with creating true marketing material that will look good because they don't know where to start. They don't have like a base set. And you should always have your logo. You should be able to have it in like one thing I was taught throughout school and throughout my internships and everything was you should always be able to have a black version, a white version, and a color version
Hmm.
because you're going to need to be able to put it in different situations. So having those as your base and then like a set of colors that go with your branding, that set package and branding kit will help you build your marketing materials so much easier. It makes it simple. Another big thing is it will help reinforce your values and your purpose of your brand. All of that should fall throughout your website and your marketing and all of that.
Yeah.
So if it's all done correctly, it should work cohesively.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a really big thing. Like I said before, I think a lot of people, when they're actually forming their business on the design aspect, they kind of throw up a website. They don't really pay attention to colors or fonts or anything like that. They have a logo made and they're like, all right, I'm done. Like, this is my business. So, taking it the next step and actually getting everything branded and everything to look cohesive, I agree. I mean, it definitely makes you more legitimate. If you go on a website and it's, super, super basic, it has like terrible formatting, you're probably not going to want to work with that person, even though their work might be like the best in the world. If their website is just terrible and they don't look professional with the colors and the fonts and stuff like that, it kind of makes you doubt them.
Oh, for sure. Speaking from personal experience, I changed my website in January of this year to something that was focused more on just wedding photography and was branded all throughout. Because in the past, I had been working on client stuff and hadn't really had time to work on mine. So I sat down and spent time on mine. I've doubled my bookings just in just from January of just by switching my website and making it look more legitimate. And I have people comment on my website, and yeah, it just makes you more legitimate and makes people trust you more.
Yeah. So, did you take down portraits and stuff and just do weddings, or what did you do?
I mainly focused on weddings, but I left up a small section of portraits. I have a section on my website that's weddings, portraits, or I have weddings, engagements, I believe, and then portraits. And that's all that's on there. But I took down all of my graphic design stuff because that's not what I wanted to focus on anymore.
Yeah.
So it was confusing for clients.
Yeah, and when you think about clients that are looking for a wedding photographer, especially if they're looking for a really good wedding photographer and they're going to spend thousands of dollars on this person, if you go to a website and they kind of have, they don't really have weddings up front or they have a bunch of other stuff going on, they're probably not going to come back to that website because they're like, oh, well, they do weddings, but they also do all this other stuff. So, how much other stuff are they going to be doing when they're trying to focus on me and my wedding?
Right, and not only that, but is that their expertise?
Yeah.
And you wanna make sure with your branding, like, that you come across as whether it's weddings or families or newborn, whatever it is, you wanna make sure that your branding comes across that you're the expert in whatever that field is.
And a lot of people ask me, how do you get into weddings? It's probably the easiest field to get into, in my opinion. But even if you just second shot one time or you have a one styled shoot, branding your company towards weddings is the way you get into
Mhm.
weddings. You have to put it on your website and make it look like that's what you do full time. Put it on your social media and focus on that. And if you keep putting up family stuff, then you're not going to get a wedding because you're not showing weddings.
Right, and, I mean, that's exactly what I did to get into it, was put up I second shot several times and did several styled shoots, and I booked my first wedding off of just those.
Yeah, I did the
So,
exact same
because
thing.
that's what I put out there.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all you gotta do, but branding is also, what content do you have on your website? Is it cohesive with what you're saying you're doing? You're branded as a wedding photographer, but your website looks like you mostly do families, then that's definitely not cohesive, and your clients aren't really gonna relate or react to that type of branding.
Right, you may get a few weddings here or there, but people aren't going to feel like you're the expert in that and, that's what you do. It's probably going to be like a referral from a friend or something like that, and that's how you're going to get it. But if that's not what you're putting out there, that's not what you're gonna book.
Right, exactly. And I think it's important to note too that, you probably will book a few weddings from not being fully branded towards weddings. But like you said, it's going to be a referral from a friend. It's going to be someone who probably wants a good deal. Or if you're trying to go towards adventure weddings, for example, it'll probably be like a church wedding or something, something that isn't fully committed to in like a monetary way, or even their plan of setting up the wedding. It's not going to be some epic elopement to Italy or something, because you just don't have work to show for it.
Right, exactly. You have to share what you want to shoot.
Yeah. We talked about why you need to brand, and we talked about how it helps, reach your ideal client, how it's not just a logo, how it's colors and copy and your work itself. So now we need to kind of clear up, because I'm sure people are wondering, okay, we know why we need to do this, but how the heck do we even get started on this? So, what would your advice be for those who want to get started in the right direction towards an actual brand?
I would say if you don't have experience doing branding, I would talk to a graphic designer and someone that specifically specializes in branding. It may be a little bit of an investment, but honestly, you'll get your return on it for sure. And then, like, come up with who you want to attract and what you want your business to say, and sit down with your graphic designer and go over all of that. Once you have your basic branding done, you'll be able to do everything else. You don't necessarily need to like have somebody build you a full website. You definitely can, and that would be great if it's in your budget. But if you at least have your basic branding done, you can go in and there are lots of templates that you can purchase off of like Creative Market and places like that to have a website that reflects your brand. So I would say definitely start with reaching out to a graphic designer. Just about every photographer is part of different Facebook groups. If you don't know somebody, reach out on one of those Facebook groups and I'm sure you can find somebody. But make sure you look at their portfolio and what they've done, just like it is when you hire a photographer.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, finding a good brand designer, they're going to help you answer questions that you aren't sure about, or kind of help you get started on your brand. They shouldn't just say like, "Hey, what do you want?" and like that's it. They should guide you, because it's a process. You don't really know what you're looking for, and you don't really know how to go about it. So, what are some questions that we need to make sure that we're answering when we're forming our brand?
I think one of the biggest things is who is your ideal client and what type of work are you trying to shoot? Every course I've taken, everybody's like, okay, well, write down your ideal client. Not only is that great for like shooting, but it's also great for putting together your branding. And then also, what emotions do you want to evoke from your brand? Are you wanting to feel like a high end photographer that mainly does city work and works a lot of with like, lines and structure and things like that? Or are you wanting to be somebody who's more adventurous and does elopements and is less posed and things like that? So definitely finding your balance between all of those things. All of that will definitely help your graphic designer figure out what is going to be best for your brand and put something together for you.
Yeah, so that kind of brought me back to when I hired my logo designer, and she asked me what my ideal client was, who I wanted to reach, what I wanted to brand towards, what work I wanted to get, etc. And she kind of went around that and made me some images for my website for the branding itself. She made me my logo, and she made me kind of a little kit that I could use on my website. But she definitely, asked me who my target audience was and kind of what I was looking for, to make sure that I was reaching that ideal client.
Yeah, and that's so important. You work with a designer who's going to do that and ask you like who you're trying to reach and not just like what style are you looking for or send me some inspiration from Pinterest and things like that. I mean, you can definitely turn to Pinterest for like some inspiration to show your designer like this is kind of what I was thinking and like the idea I was leaning towards, but I want you to go in your own direction and like base it off of who my ideal client is and what I'm trying to relay to my ideal client.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because that I didn't really think about because, if you're just sending Pinterest inspiration, which is great because that can totally help you, but you want to make sure that the Pinterest inspiration that you're actually looking at hits the people you actually want to come into your brand. If you're doing some really, if you really like the whites and the brights and the pale pinks and the really like light and airy branding look, but your pictures themselves are like dark and moody and journalistic, then that branding is really pretty, but it's not going to match at all the client that you're looking for.
Right. And I mean, you can definitely take aspects of like your inspiration and like adjust it to fit your style too. But definitely let your designer take the reins and help find you what's best. Don't just use like a generic logo you find on like Creative Market or something like that. Find something that's going to reflect your brand and not be a generic logo.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, because when I was starting out, I will admit that I went on Etsy and I bought a logo. And I can tell you right now, there's probably 100 other businesses with that same exact logo
Yeah.
because it was like $20. And I was like, all right, this will work. Don't do that, guys.
No, definitely not if you're trying to reach a higher budget because they're going to know if they've seen somebody with the same logo. It's not going to make you memorable either.
Yeah, it's going to be like, wow, that's so simple. And like, I've seen 20 other things that look kind of like that.
Right. Yeah. Everybody with the watercolor background or
Hmm.
something simple like that they've bought off Etsy. If your logo doesn't reflect who you're trying to reach, it goes back to being memorable. And like clients looking through 70 other websites and they've got to remember who is who. And if you have a logo that's similar to somebody else's, there's a good possibility that they could mix you up with somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And I mean, it's the same thing with making sure that your company name is unique too, which I clearly did not do when I named Wanderlust Photography. But I will tell you, back when I named it, that wasn't really a popular like thing. Now it is. And I can tell you that I get inquiries from like Texas who thinks I'm like a local photographer because there's so many Wonderlist photographies. So don't do that either.
Right. Make sure you research your name too. Um, and like look through like local records and like trademarking and copywriting websites to see if your name is taken, and also check websites to see if like a domain name is taken before you name your business, because you don't want to go in and do all of your branding and then come to find out that the website name that you're sold on is not available.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, like I had to name mine like Wonderlust Photo Co. instead of just like wonderlustphotography.com or, whatever. Yes, good points and things I obviously didn't think of back when I was a newbie. But anyways, so we've talked about so much today. We've talked about how to reach your target audience and that you actually can reach your target audience with branding itself, which is huge because that's your main part of your business. And we've talked about how branding is not just a logo, but it's actually the entire set of how you're representing your business through copy and fonts and your photos and your colors and stuff like that. So, Morgan, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can we find you if we have more questions?
Yeah, you can find me at heckdesignsandphotography.com. On my Facebook page, it's the same thing, Heck Designs and Photography, or my Instagram at heck_designs. And you can find me at any of those. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot me a message.
All right. Before we log off, let's do a few fun questions and then we'll be done. But okay, so what is your favorite ice cream?
Candy Bar Blast from our local ice cream shop in Smyrna, Tennessee.
That sounds good. What does it have in it?
Like Reese's, Butterfingers, and Heath, all crushed
Ooh,
up in it.
yum.
And it's all like homemade, and they make it within like 48 hours of you being there. So,
Oh,
so good.
yes. Okay, what is your dream vacation?
My dream vacation would probably be to France. I was there a few years ago and I fell in love, but I want to explore more of like outside of Paris and
Yeah.
throughout the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the countryside. That's something I definitely want to go back, like to Italy for the same thing. Not the tourist stuff, but the countryside stuff. All right. What is your favorite color?
I'm gonna be generic and say blue.
Okay, it matches your branding.
And it's true. It's true.
Okay, so like I said, we've talked about a ton today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, guys. And to everyone listening, of course, thank you as well. We'll talk to you guys next week. Thank you for listening to the Mentor Project with Nicole Bruce. Tune in next time for more on marketing, SEO, and going full-time as a creative.